They're back, guys. I normally get stumped by this whole Zoom thing these days because every single time it's not recorded, whatever. But welcome back. Today we have no Nathan. It's me and Emily Anger. I went for the surname today. Got it right? Didn't I
Yours
get it right?
truly, yes, yours truly.
I hope you guys obviously enjoyed the Euro so far. Emily's team is out. She was kind of in like cloud nine, but not in cloud nine yesterday. Like she started off the pod. She was like, or before the pod started, she was like, "Man, do you watch the game?" How do you feel about Sweden losing?
You know what? I always say I don't care about football and I don't care about these things. I'm like, nah, I don't really care. But I was on nails yesterday and I was like screaming and it was a good game, and I was really proud of Sweden. I felt a little bit like
Yeah,
patriot. I don't even know that word.
patriotic,
Uh,
right? Yeah.
yeah, that one. And I was just so heartbroken when they lost at like the 122nd minute or something. I'm like, what?
130 basically was
Oh
like
my god, yeah. I mean, it was a really good game. And I don't really watch football, but I do love when it's the Euro, like the Europe and the Worlds and the Olympics. Like that's when I think sports just creates this there's something in the atmosphere, right? That you just go, this is, you can feel that everyone is tuned in on the same vibrations, and it's like,
yeah, yeah.
ooh. And so yeah, I really enjoyed the game. Obviously, I was really sad when they grew up when they lost, and but at the end of the day, they played really well. They deserved to come at like, see, I can't even speak English right now, but they deserved to go to the quarters, but it's a game and it is what it is. So
What was Sweden like in general yesterday? Was it like, I can tell you about England like in a minute, but what was it like? Was it like packed, pubs everywhere? Were people like out in the streets? Was it just a bit quiet?
but Sweden is not like the UK when it comes to that. Like this is why I love the UK. It's the whole thing about everyone goes to the pub and it's like street rallies. I remember when Chelsea won in 2012, I think it was, and
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
lived in
Champions League.
Chelsea,
Yeah.
and I lived there, and it was just a whole like a freaking party on the street. Like that would never happen in Sweden. We're
Really?
we're the one who would like go home and sit at home and just go like woo.
And that's it.
So yeah, it's a whole different ball game when it comes to like the expression of love for a sport. I think we do have
Yeah.
obviously like the crazy people, hooligans, what like tribe, but yeah, like the normal Swede, we will sit at home, have maybe a couple of people over, and but it wouldn't be bigger than that.
Wow, I always thought it'd be very very similar to us guys. I mean, yesterday it was nuts. Wembley Box Park was rammed. I mean, I wasn't there. I was just like, I'm not even gonna go near Wembley, but I could see it from like Instagram and just seeing from TV as well. Like everyone's going nuts
Well,
from that viewpoint.
you say that, but I obviously wasn't outside myself. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but no, I know like when they played last, when they went into the finals, there were definitely like it's more vibrancy on the streets, right? My friends were out having dinner, and they're like, and they don't watch football, so they're like, why is everyone so happy? Uh, so yeah, but I don't think it doesn't compare to what it's like in the UK. So
No, no, yeah, I don't think so either. Yeah, no chance.
yeah.
But let's dive deep into today's topic. So I think a lot of people really love like our like topic about sports. And I got a question asked the other day about our journey to fitness, but also like what would our career be away from fitness? Like let's say alternative universe right now, Emily's in a completely different world, fitness is not around or whatever. Like what do you think you would be doing? And what again it's probably linked into like what you were good at in school and stuff like that. But let's dive deep into that. Like, yeah, what would Emily be? Is the big question.
Well, if I look back at what I was studying in my A levels, I was studying media. So I was doing, photographs and videography and stuff like that. I thought like being creative was always a part of me, which is maybe why dancing became a part of me, and then eventually doing vocals became a part of me. But I mean, I also studied law. So straight after my A levels, I went on to study law. So it might have been that I became a lawyer or an attorney or something, or like the judge or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so I mean, I could have gone into the corporate world, uh, and God knows who I would have been if I were in the corporate
Yeah.
world.
I mean, we had this discussion before, right? We were like, how do you have acted in the corporate world? And you were like, I'd be the boss, or I'd be like someone who's a manager or whatever, right?
Yeah, but you know what? I don't know if I would have been that because I attribute so much to the choice of training
Yes,
to
yes.
being the boss. I wouldn't be this confident person, shouldn't have been for the fitness. So I don't know if I would have gone straight to the corporate world as a 20-year-old. I don't know if I would have been this bossy lady that I am today, because I attribute so much to it, to my fitness journey. Like I always say, like the greatest thing, I thank my 16, 17-year-old self for choosing to buy a gym membership, because it had the most magnificent impact on my life. Like I actually don't know what I would have been like as a person should I have not made that choice at that age. And I think that's just crazy. Like if I'm just gonna go off the tangent, but we have like these these alternative realities, right? Like if, I don't know what that film is. Is it Interstellar or something? When you have
it is yeah.
Where you could
right?
Yeah, exactly. Such a good film, where you could have made that choice, and then you have that whole reality of life that could have gone off, and then you have this reality of life based on that one choice. So again, like I don't know who I would have been. I literally can't stress that enough, how much fitness had an influence on me as a person.
It's a whole blue pill, red pill thing, right?
Yeah,
like, think about
I
it. It's
took
like
the right pill at the right time, I'll tell you that.
yeah, thank God I took the right pill too. But it's funny because you mentioned there obviously advice. Like that's the next topic I wanted to also get into as well. Like advice to your younger self. Go back to like obviously a 16-year-old self. Would you change anything right now, or would you just be like, I'm actually like very very happy? Because again, the ones who ask that question are the ones who are always very successful. I've always found it. Like the ones who was like, what advice do you give your younger self? And then everyone's like, still carrying the same way, I think, or make those mistakes. What would you change? Was there anything you'd actually change?
No, not at all. Not one bit. I mean, there's been a lot of trialing times in my life. I mean, even to this day, there's a lot of trialing things. But I guess now with the mindset that I have, I look at them as very different things. Whereas things that happened to me when I was a teenager, not very nice things that happened, I I didn't look at them the same way as I looked at them now, but I really see now how important they were for me to become this character that I am today. So I wouldn't go back and change anything. Not even like the trauma and stuff like that. Nothing I wouldn't go back and change. Do I think that you deserve trauma? Like, no, you don't. Of course, you don't deserve trauma, but they shape you if you choose them to shape you in a good way. I made the choice of not be a victim quite early, like very early. I decided that I won't be defined by all of these things that has happened to me. And therefore, I never really felt like a victim. Even though things were done to me, I wouldn't take it on and have that interfere with my self-belief, if you know what I mean. And so I wouldn't go back and change anything. I'll let
At
you
what
know.
age did that awareness come through? Because that's like, it sounds like it came at a young age, right? Like what age do you feel like I don't want to be a victim? Because there's people right now who are in their 40s, 50s are still victims of their past and their present. So at what age did that come to you and you're like, well, actually I need to make sure, because that then shape your next part, and this is where you are right now because of where you were then and what you said to yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be very brutally transparent here. When I was 16, I was raped. So that was, something that happened to me. And I could have gone down the path of hating men, not trusting people. And I didn't. I mean, I was hurt. I was maybe apprehensive. It took me some time to maybe open up. I mean, at that point, my boyfriend, next boyfriend, like my actual boyfriend that I had, that was 3 years later. So I definitely had a period where I was vulnerable to guys, but I actually wouldn't go back and change it, because at that point I made that realization, like, hey, okay, this has happened to me. But the craziest thing, and I know this is now becoming the most deepest shit ever. I just told you when we were gonna open up, like, I don't know what's gonna happen. We're gonna, but, and this is, I mean, and if people can comment on this, and this would be awesome to hear people's opinions, right? But because the person who did that to me was someone that I knew, in a way, I never felt like I was, like, in my head, I was like, well, rape is something that happens to you when you walk alone in the woods. So my perception of what rape was, it wasn't very clear, because that was how I was thinking about it. But then here we are, like a little time later, I'm like, actually this happened to me. So I was definitely in denial that it happened. And then I was like, actually it did happen. Now I can go and I can change myself. I first of all, I need to understand that I need to say this happened, because otherwise in my subconsciousness, something has happened to me, but I'm not accepting that it's happened, because I'm trying to justify it in a way, because I didn't want to feel like a rape victim. Yeah. And so that was the defining moment when I was like, I don't want to be feeling this way. I don't want to have fear. I don't want to judge other people based on my experience. And then also the whole thing, like, how do you then learn to stand up for yourself? Because basically you sit here in front of me, I'm pretty badass. No one can push me down. And it started from, that. And my first ever boyfriend, he was quite abusive. So I mean, it started quite early, and then I was like, actually, this is not who I want to associate myself with. So there was a lot of trialing things that made me like, hey, these are the kind of people I never want to have in my life. I'm gonna say no to, and these are the type of people that I want to welcome into my life, and that I can actually focus on. So yeah, I mean, it started early for me. Sorry, I went on like a little deep dark secret here, but
like obviously that's going to, someone who listens to this potentially may have gone through something similar. It may empower them to be like, wow, okay, someone, there's millions of people go through the same thing, right? But it will empower them to be like, wow, actually, they've gone through and seeing your journey now, like it would inspire other people to be like seeing where you're at. And like you said, you're a badass female who's like, this is who I am now. And you're quite confident in who you are on a day-to-day basis, right? Even through the podcast, but people follow you on Instagram and so on, they'll know who you are in general. But so obviously you went through that. And then as you've gone through like the next couple of years as well, you've gone through more self-development, right? What other self-awareness or like things that you've come out about yourself and you're like, oh, actually, I don't want to, because again, you go through your mid-20s as well, you grow to a different level as you get into like now your 30s, and obviously after that, be 40s, 50s, you kind of go through this like decade-long like a journey every single year, every single decade. You're like, oh, I've learned this new, this is new, this is new. What do you think you've learned now in your 20s that you're going to now kind of take into your 30s?
Well, for the record, I'm already 32 years old. So
Emily's good looks got her in a anyway still.
So I mean, in my 20s, so I first left Sweden when I was 19. Turned 20 when I first left. I was 19 and I turned 20. And the thing that I learned early in my 20s was to just take a chance and actually go for something, right? So as I said, like I studied law, and I moved to LA because of love. I mean, this is just going to be my life story now because it feels like that's where we're going. But so I moved to LA because I fell in love with a guy, and he then opened up the door for all of these creative people that I met. And I've always wanted to sing and do creative stuff, but I've been conditioned to believe that I should be going down the academia route because I was a clever one. I was good at studying. I'm sharp. Like, so I was the one who was like, you're going to take the torch and take the family forward. Like that was kind of like a responsibility that I felt.
Yeah. Did you feel the pressure there? Sorry to cut you off there, but do you feel that pressure in terms of like I said, you're the academic one and you're like, I have to carry this mantle, this torch. And you're like, but on the other hand, you're like, yeah, I want to do that. But at the same time, you're like, I want to be creative, I want to do this stuff. Hence why you obviously moved to LA.
Yeah, I mean, it was a massive turmoil inside of me. And because dyslexia runs in my family, I should have probably had it, but I got so obsessed about not having it. So I read all the time when I was a kid because I just didn't want to have dyslexia. And basically, yeah, I mean, when I told my dad and my granddad was a really smart man, like an economist, really smart. And I mean, he's not alive today. I wish he was because I could have like learned so much from him now. But when I told them and I said, look, I'm not going to continue studying law. I'm going to move to London and study music.
Well, what happened to the LA in between that? So were you in LA? How long were you in LA for?
I was only in LA for like 3 months. So it wasn't very long, but it was long enough for me to get that, oh, you can do music. Because my partner at that point, or my boyfriend at that point, he was a musician, and then all of his friends were musicians. So I was surrounded by these guys all the time. And I was like, wow, because none of my friends when I was a kid were instrumental. Like no one was creative in that way. So I was never exposed to it. I just had a love for it.
Is that
And
because of just environment, right? Like you just mentioned, like that no one had like, because no one studied it. Well, I guess everyone went in the same route, which is academia, and that was really it, right?
well, my friends were the sporty ones, right? So I did football because of my friends did football, as we talked about last episode.
Yep. Yep.
So most of my friends were the sporty ones, and also good study. Like they were good in academia as well. So the whole thing about music never really, like my parents never really played a whole lot of music in the house, and so it wasn't that I was surrounded by it. And then all of a sudden I was surrounded by it. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And then leaving the home for the first time and going like, wow, I'm so free. And I mean, I didn't like living in LA as a 19-year-old because what can you do in LA as a 19-year-old? Not much, for the record. But so then I came back and I was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna go to London and I want to study music. Actually, before that, because I went out traveling for 5 months, so I came back really heartbroken. And I was like, "What am I gonna do with myself?" And I started taking capoeira lessons because I couldn't afford dancing. I didn't have any money left, so I took capoeira because it was cheap. And that's when and this is, I don't know where it came from, but where the whole, ooh, so now I do capoeira. I should go to where they do capoeira and learn. So that's when I went to Brazil. And I did the same when I started doing salsa. I'm like, oh, so now I do Cuban salsa. Let me go to Cuba. And I don't know where that came from and where, like, I don't know. It's just always been there in me to wanting to learn from where it comes from. Curiosity. We spoke about that in another episode as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when I came back, at this point, I was like, oh, I've gone to London. I've done my assessment. I got into the university. And I came back to Sweden, and 6 weeks later I moved to London. So it was all really quick. And then, but my dad was like, "No, you're gonna study law." I'm like, "No, Dad, I'm really not. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but this is what I want to do." I mean, that's where it started. So that was my 20s. That was my early 20s.
That's amazing, by the way. Like, because that's a lot of growth, in my opinion. Like, I think a lot of people don't go through that because of fear of, like, I guess, judgment. Fear of failure, I guess, would also come into that, because you're like, I'm going from law to this, etc. Like, it's always chopping and changing, right? I also love how you went to like countries where the birth of that art comes from. Like, if it's capoeira, like it's probably a lot cheaper as well, right? If you, let's say you go to central London, you're like, oh, let me learn capoeira from this Brazilian school, whatever. It's going to be way more expensive.
You can't even compare it. Like when you immerse yourself in a culture, and also
Yeah.
I used to do samba, like carnival samba as well.
Yeah.
I did mainly belly dance, but I did some samba as well because I thought it was awesome. And just to go to a place where you just have to be in, you feel it, and there's music on the street, there is, it's just everywhere. And I don't know, I absolutely loved it. Yeah.
That's amazing. And then, so why London in the first place? And then, so why obviously you got the buzz from bug from music from LA, but why London? Why not go back to, I guess, LA? I guess you probably were bored of LA, but why not go back to LA? Because you're like, I know people there already, etc. What was the appeal of London, basically?
Well, there was a Swedish girl that I got to know over in LA, and she had first done a course in London before she moved to LA. And I thought, like, that's pretty cool. And I was, obviously, at that point I'd broken up with my boyfriend. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't go back to LA and do like, hey, I'm stalking you now. So so I don't know. Like, and at the end of the day, I think I'm very much I get this instinct and I go for it, and then I take it to wherever it takes me. And London at that point, always being close to home, there's many pros of actually not going too far away.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, it was just fate. I can't say anything other than it was just like fate.
It's amazing. So, but going back to the first question, would music be your alternative calling, basically, or would it be like, because you've done loads of different things now? You said law, music, potentially get into like yoga, becoming like into yoga, or into, like, let's say if you immerse yourself so much into like the whole like capoeira, you're like, I could potentially become a capoeira teacher. If you spend like a couple of years in like Brazil, do you think, what could have been your calling there, alternative calling?
I was a dance teacher before all of this. I was actually a dance teacher. So the what I always say there is something about my core purpose, which is to serve others. Every job that I've had, I see it as a service of, like, an act of service to others. Like, I used to work caring for old people, and I loved it. Like, the whole thing about helping other people to a better life, it's just something that's always been inside of me. So I don't know, I probably would have done something in those lines as well, because it gives me so much life fulfillment to do. But I think maybe that's why the law came in, because, like, wanting to help other people, and maybe that comes back from my trauma happening when I was 16, like injustice and wanting to help people that maybe are having difficult time, like, so maybe it's all stemming back to my own trauma, maybe. But yeah, I mean, that's all I wanted to do. I don't think I would have been a capoeira teacher, and I don't don't think I would have been that. But yeah, let's just flip to Tyra, because I want to know everything about your journey then.
Yeah, I'll mention in a minute. Hold on. And then, so how did fitness come in into all of this? Because you mentioned, was it through like, oh, this is now like, because again, your 20s went through all of that. Where the hell did the gym come in this situation?
Well, the gym came in. So when I was about, yeah, maybe I was about 14, 15, 16, I used to go to self-defense classes, and at that point, and also I used to go to these like kickboxing classes. It was just me, my best friend, and lads. In the hood, by the way, and they used to call me Rambo because I used to get really fucking aggressive. And yeah, and I would like probably like have a little bandana and just go like, yeah, I'm so cool right
War
now.
paint on you as well, right?
I would have loved that. And I think at that point, but maybe again, like subconscious conditioning, like, hey, I need to be strong because I'm small, right? And also the insecurity we talked about as well. Like, actually, I didn't like the way I looked.
Yep.
So the gym was how I knew I could change that, right? And then I happened to have one of my best friends here in Sweden. He's still probably one of the best trainers I know. He introduced me to the gym. He would write me a gym pro. Actually, I bought a pair of dumbbells and I had a Bosu ball.
Oh, yeah.
And he would write me a program, so I would actually exercise at home. And then all of a sudden, he got me introduced to the gym. He used to train footballers, so like the little leagues, and he was really good at it. So I would come to training, and he would train me, and I was like, I actually really enjoy this, and I move pretty well. So, but as I said in the last episode, like the fitness became a real thing when I couldn't afford dancing, because it was the cheapest option for me to do something with myself, because I have a lot of energy, and if I don't expend it, I go crazy. So like it's partly the whole thing, I wanted to look good, but partly I go crazy if I don't do anything active. And I don't think I would have been very nice if I were like this. And I haven't trained today, which is why I'm a little bit like,
You're like jumpy, right? You're like, holy crap, I need to train. I'm actually going to train straight after this anyway, so it makes sense. But in terms of like, in terms of obviously like wrapping up with fitness over there, do you think with you now obviously being a body transformation specialist, you're doing your core purpose, which is helping other people? Do you see yourself going into something different in the future then? Like, let's say away from this, and you're like, all right, guys, I'm waving I'm waving to everyone. I'm done with body transformations now. It could be something else instead, which again, the core purpose is still helping other people, but it may not be in the body transformation world. Do you see yourself doing that, or not really? This is it.
I think I'm slowly going away from it. I don't know if it's ever going to go away completely. But the way that I coach people now, I see the body transformation as just a section of what I do, right? It's a small piece of what I do for everyone. So it's definitely not the core, even though people that you speak with is always about the result that they get. But that's not the coaching that I do anymore. Like, it's a part of it, but the coaching that I do now is very different. And I'm focusing way more on the whole personal growth and what it means to rise up and actually looking at your life as a whole, and understand that it's all interlinked. And in order for you to achieve the life that you want, the health that you needs to support that. So yeah, I mean, body transformation for sure, but it's not like the key focus. This is why I also like why I stopped posting a lot of before and afters, because I don't want people to know me as the body transformation coach anymore. It's part of what I do, but it's not how I want to sell myself anymore, because I don't see it as that anymore. So yeah.
It's fascinating. It's gonna be interesting to see your growth for the next like couple of years and seeing like where you want to transition towards. Because obviously seeing like you just
space.
mentioned, yeah, you just mentioned like, you know, from 20s and how much what you did there. I was like, okay, cool. There's probably something else that's going to go through in your 30s, which we're going to obviously see. And you guys can obviously live through it through the podcast as well. So I think it'll be quite cool. So my one was interesting. My journey, like, so what would I be doing away from fitness, right? It's the good old question. I've always asked myself that because I'm like, what was I really good at? If I'm going to be honest, I'm like, I never really applied myself like how I apply myself now into like business, coaching, and just working with people. I never applied myself when I was like that when I was younger. I was always distracted. Like every report card I got from school was he can apply himself, but he's always distracted. And I was always distracted. I always like I couldn't sit still. I don't know if it was ADHD to be honest. Never got tested, but it could have possibly been ADHD.
Questionable.
Yeah, should have got it tested, but it was something that I was like, damn. But sports was always one that I really really loved, right? So I made a conscious decision when like 13. I'm like, I'm gonna be in sports no matter what. But I didn't know it was gonna be like body transformation world right now. I didn't know like initially you start for like I want to be an athlete because that's the word first. That's the only thing you know, and that's the only thing you care about because it's the one that most gets respected. And then after that, you're like, hey, let me be a physio. Let me go do this. Let me go do that. So you go into those other realms. But for me, I remember when I was in like college as well, my teachers were like, why don't you do like a UA for B course and become like a coach? So coaching was always going to be in my, like, it was in my DNA kind of thing. But it was going to be in football first to very begin with. And I was like, I like it. But then I decided, I was like, no, let me go to university. And I'm going to go to university because I think this will be the right calling for me. But even during the, like the whole UA for B thing, and I didn't actually do it. I just went to do like FA level 1 and 2. So it's like the basics of basics. It's like doing a level 2 and level 3 personal training
What were
course.
you studying?
Sports science.
Okay.
Yeah, so I literally just went into sports throughout the whole thing. And at that moment, I'm like, all right, I also like, and I started researching about agents and being like an agent, sports agent. I'm like, that could be interesting. Have you seen the movie Jerry Maguire? Show
No, I
Me
don't
the
think
Money.
I have actually.
So it's basically a sports agency movie. Tom Cruise is in it, and one of the big scenes in it is like, "Show me the money." And I remember watching that film, like, oh, I could become a sports agent, dealing with other people, helping them get the best possible contracts. But you need a law degree for that. And I was like, damn, I ain't gonna go do law, am I? I'm just not academic enough to go do the law degree right now. Although I think if I did apply myself and I said I want to do a law degree, I probably would have done it. But just the path I took, because remember in England, it's also very much like it's weird because you have to choose from a young age what you want to do, and you have to have like a bit of a clear path. And it's never like you just said, like you've done this. In England, I don't know if you can probably do that, but it's like they see you as a bit of aloof, if that makes sense. They're like, what's going on here? Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to do that? Why do you want to do this? And it's hard to do that either, right? Because if you want to do law, you've got to do like A levels in this, you've got to do this. You got to get this grade in order to get to this college. It's very like you have to be very linear with it. You can't take like a different path to it. Whereas I found that with sport, you could. And that was the beauty of it. Like you can do a sports science degree, but you don't always have to be like a sports science specialist in this or that. And, you know, you become a PE teacher. You can become a body transformation coach if you wanted to. So I went out into that and I was like, okay, it's either going to be agent or coach, football coach. And I was like, okay, cool. Then Torres, if you remember 2012, right? Champions League win, Chelsea won Champions League. They had a player called Fernando Torres, and a lot of football fans obviously know this one. Emily, I'm pretty sure. I don't know if you know it. You probably do. You're nodding. You're like, yep, I know Fernando Torres. He basically went through this like weird patch where he went from like scoring loads of goals to no goals. And we were learning sports psychology at the time. And I became like very fascinated by the brain. And I was like, man, that's amazing. Like just to see this guy's confidence like deteriorate right in front of me, in front of millions of people watching this. Like I'd love to help him. And that's when my whole like love for sports psychology and psychology came into it. And I chose that as my degree. My teachers were like, what are you doing? Why do you want to do sports psychology? I'm like, I've done sports science since I was 13. I'm kind of bored of it. That being said, I still did sports science the first couple of modules when you got to uni, but I still loved it. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. But there was a lot of Freud and there was a lot of all that kind of stuff in the very beginning. So like I didn't like it as much. I was nearly going to quit uni because I'm like, this ain't the psychology I'm after. It was only the second year and third year where I got more of that whole sports psychology aspect, like the imagery, why we do this, case studies, etc. And then that was my kind of calling to it. So it was always going to be sports. I never did anything like too differently, if that makes sense. I know like you went from law to then where you are right now. I never went to that route because I was just like, I hated like education in that way, because it was just like one of those where I was always frustrated. I'm like, why not teaching me taxes, or why not teaching me like banking and stuff like that? Like, how come we don't know these core key skills? Why do we have to like learn it later in our life versus,
No.
yeah, I was always a bit
But
rebellious.
no doubt that we should change the schooling system to actually teach people valuable things, right?
Yeah.
Um,
That's a big one, isn't it? Like we should do a podcast on actually, like the
Yeah.
schooling system.
how
What
we
think
would
about it.
set up the school system should we be the ruler of the world. That would be amazing. Let's do that.
What would you do if I was prime minister right now? You know, how would I change the world, or how would I change England specifically? But yeah,
Kunal,
that's
Prime
what
Minister.
that's what I was like. I was like, you know, that was my kind of path to it. But path towards body transformation, but you can see it started from a young age. It didn't become, it wasn't like an overnight thing. You know, sometimes with personal training, you can do it overnight and you're like, or you hit body transformation, you're like, I want to do this 6 months down the line, right? Like it's for me, it was like a process that took time, but I knew the process, but I didn't know it was going to be body transformation also. So I kind of let it kind of drift in whatever way I wanted to go towards and whatever I liked. So I went from sports science, coaching. So coaching was always there, then scouting, and then being an agent. And then from there onwards, it was like, all right, let me actually just do psychology, sports psychology, because that's what interested me in that moment. And I was doing a lot of research on it just before uni. I'm like, this could be a really good degree, should be a good degree. Let me try it out, see how I get on with it. And then after that, it was when I was like, nah, I went through my own personal journey for fitness, right? Which said, whoa, like I made a huge impact on someone as my friend. And I was like, well, I've just seen him like get better confidence. I was confident because I just went through it. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. You mentioned it as well. Like at the start, you were like I'm confident now. I don't know if I would be in that corporate world if I didn't have the gym. Like, you know, and the thing is, I've seen with corporate people who've actually had the gym, then had the courage to go for promotions and had the courage to do loads of different things in their life, but it's because of the gym. So I also have to give like massive credit to the gym, because even if I didn't become a coach, I don't know if I would become a better coach in the football world, because I don't know if I've had the gym. I don't think I would have gone to the gym. I think I would have just avoided it, because gym is not that big in the football culture. Like you're not known to, like, if you go to the gym, so you go to the gym, fine, but it's not a big deal. They just care about playing football. So I think I would have been in the same boat. I'd have been a fat football coach, in my opinion, which would have been hilarious.
Um, so just go back a little bit. Was there ever pressure from you and your family? Because no one ever told me that I needed to study law. That was my choice.
Yep.
I think I always, again, I always looked for validation, and I felt that I would get validation by being the good girl. So that's why I came home with good grades. That's why I wanted to study. Like, so I felt like that's how I got validation.
Yep.
And so no one ever told me you need to do this. That was my choice. But was there anyone who said like you should be doing this? Like, also I know in your culture there is a little bit like you have three options or something like that. It's like you should be a doctor, a lawyer, or a accountant or whatever. Yeah, exactly. So did you feel that pressure?
100%. I got it from my own, like my mom. My mom was quite big on this, and she was just like, even my uncle, to a large extent, he one time said to me, nah, you can't be doing this and all that kind of stuff. Now he's like doing my accounts. It's funny. And he's kind of looking all of that kind of stuff. But like, when I remember, mom was like, she was very adamant that I was not going to do sports as a degree. To a large extent, we nearly fell out, like a really, really bad day. I was like, no, I need to go do this. But she didn't know, because she kind of started asking other families, like, what do you think of this and what? And again, other families have no clue either, right? If their son is there, like in Bristol University doing like whatever degree, or if they're in I don't know, whatever uni they're in, Portsmouth or something like that, you know, they have no clue what a sports degree can look like. So my mom went to like, instead of looking at like the internet, for example, she went to ask other people, and that made it even worse, because they're like, oh, I don't know anything about this. And so it was also the unknown. So I stepped into the unknown, and I was quite confident I can be very successful at it. My mom, on the other hand, was like, I've never seen anyone do this, so therefore this is a failure. She didn't actually say it's a failure, but she was, at a moment, she was like, there's no way you can do this. It's only recent, well, I won't say recent, it's probably the last like 3 years where she's really accepted it, because she's like, well, you live life on your own terms, you do, like, when you want to wake up, you can wake up. All of these little elements, which she's a bit jealous of, but at the same time, it's because I had to take that road, and also be quite bullish within my own self. Like, if there's a kid listening to this right now who is Asian and who is like wanting to kind of beat the norm of like not doing the business, not doing accounts and so on. I mean, I'm in business right now anyway, which is what I loved as well. I love business and sports. I'm now in the sports business, to put it that way. But I remember when I was that age, I was like, damn, like everything was against me in that situation, because everyone's like, you can't do this, you can't do that. But I think it's getting more accepted now,
Wouldn't
which
you
is good
say
to
like
see.
the Gary V era is here, where like now it's encouraged in a whole different way to take on that self-proclaimed route,
Yeah,
and fuck the adults.
yeah. I
Uh,
wish I had Gary Vee when
I
well,
wish I had Gary V as
I
well.
wish I had Gary Vee's video, like when he's got like one video saying advice to your 20-year-old self or something like that. I remember like I never had we didn't have like Gary Vee, right, as social media. You just kind of dealt with it. You just dealt with life as you went on, and that was really it. But I mean, sometimes you can get caught up in that as well. Just keep watching videos for the whole day, and you're like, oh, I'm so inspired, but you don't do nothing. So I'm actually glad I didn't have that in that moment. I can go watch it now and be like, wow, I'm actually inspired. But in that moment, I think I just didn't need anything apart from like just go out there and do what you need to do. But yeah, I think, we say all the time, right? Social stigmas with careers are always going to be there. With like, even lawyer, like people want you to be a lawyer, doctor, accountant, something that they'll perceive as very successful, right? That's what they perceive as success. Like put it this way, it was funny. Like we used to talk about, like, even when we were younger, we're talking about footballers and stuff. Like, why not be a footballer? And then they were like, "Nah, it's not a good job." I was like, "What do you mean it's not a good job?
It's
They
like the
earn,
best job in the world.
yeah, they earn millions." And I always found that fascinating, because they were like, they perceive good jobs as always like the lawyers, accountants, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, but a footballer earns 10 times more than what you'd earn. And it always baffled me, to be honest. That's when I made a mission to be like, I want to be in sports, because I knew what I could get towards in terms of sports. So yeah, and then in terms of like college as well, like a lot of teachers were very supportive from that viewpoint. Like I went back to my old college, talked to the teachers, were like, yeah, you always like I started concentrating a lot more in college because I was doing what I loved. I was just doing sports, and I was really, and I was like, listen, I'm immersed in this right now, and it became a lot easier. When I'm doing something that I like, I'm very immersed in it. That's why I like coaching. Like coaching for me is like amazing, because I'm just like on a day-to-day basis, there's always something new. Every week you get something different from your client, and you're like, what am I going to get from this client? What's the response going to look like? What's that going to look like? So yeah, I mean, social stigma is always going to be there. I think it's going to change now in the next 10 years. A lot more parents, like, because again, I'm coaching loads of parents now, and they are very open to seeing their kids do something different, which is really, really cool to see. Because like 20 years ago, like my mom didn't care about it. Like in a way, she was like, no, you're going to do this only. Which would have made me miserable, to be honest. Like looking back on it, like imagine if I did follow that, and I said to her like, all right, fine, let me do business, and then here I am as a 26-year-old, I would be like in no man's land, no purpose, nothing.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes you have to like go against the norm, find your purpose, and then stick to it, and then prove other people wrong by just doing it, and be trying to be the best as you possibly could be. I personally think.
So then let's look at your 20s. How old are you today, by the way?
I'm guess.
You're probably like 29.
Nah. I just look older.
Wait,
Emily's
how old
shocked.
are you?
I'm 26.
Oh my fucking God. Oh, sorry. Okay, so what would you say from your 20s? What's your biggest learning? How are you going to enter your 30s? Gosh,
One
you
thing
just made me feel like this wise hag sitting here.
Yeah. I love that everyone gets me as like a 29-year-old, 30-year-old, which is
It's the
quite
beard.
cool.
For everyone
Yeah,
who listens in, it's definitely the beard.
the beard is.
Is that a gray hair?
Yeah, it's gray hair. The grays are coming through, so that's why.
Yeah. Okay, so what is your biggest then, apart from the whole thing about choosing your path, right? Have you had any defining moments in your 20s or early, like late teens, where it's been significant to who you are today? And it doesn't, have to be traumatic, but has there been a
Not
moment?
20s, but I'd say like obviously my dad's death led me to focusing on health, I would say. So you can call it, yeah, traumatic effect. Because if it wasn't for my dad's death, I still wouldn't have cared about health as much, right? Because you need pain sometimes in order to come out the other side, and also focus on, okay, look, you've now got training is something I always knew at that. As soon as he passed away, I was like, damn, like, death can go like, it's literally anyone can go like that. And I was like, I need to care about my health. But I was like 10 years old at that moment. So I knew by 10 years old, and by 13, I knew I was going to be in sports. So it's very, I guess you can call it, yeah, I guess I wouldn't say 20s, but I can say my early years. I was already quite self-aware of like what I wanted to do. It's just I needed to fight the social stigmas and my own family against it, and say, no, I'm not going to follow that. And even to this day, I'm the only one in my family, cousins included, who's doing something completely different and also running his own business. The rest are on like kind of the corporate environment, doing things very, very differently. But I decided, like, I guess after my dad's death, I'm like, gotta look after my health. Even though I didn't straight away, but I knew that's going to be where I'm going to like do it. And then obviously I enjoyed it. And then suddenly here I am.
Isn't it funny how pain awakens us?
Yeah. I think pain, it goes one or two ways, right? Like you either like, I was watching Amy Winehouse's documentary, What a Legend, by the way.
Yeah.
But her pain led her to her death, but also led her to making amazing music, right? Like it was like success and failure at the same time. It was unreal. Like watching that documentary, like seeing how she reacted to it. She went to like obviously like rehab and stuff like that, and loads of different things. And again, this documentary is amazing. If you guys haven't seen it, it's on Amazon Prime. You have to pay for it though. But like I paid for it. I paid for it. Not gonna lie, I was like, I need to watch this documentary. It was really. I watched one trailer and I was like, she's a legend. And then yeah, it's how you kind of perceive it, and again, your environment. Your environment matters a lot, in my opinion. But also I think pain sometimes leads us to personal development. I don't know if you think of like, I don't know if I need to have a chat with everyone who's had pain in their life to be like, have you actually dive deep into personal development? And if most people have, I have a feeling they have, which then led up to like more knowledge within themselves, and then they're like, I need to do something different or out of the ordinary within my life. And I think yeah, pain is where you see it, how you see it, like where you go from there. Like, do you then become potentially a victim, or do you say, fuck it, I'm gonna I'm gonna do this instead? And I think that's kind of understanding that, right? I think it's quite crucial. But yeah, pain can lead to success as well, right?
For sure. I mean, if there's no pain, there is no growth, because you won't recognize it as growth either, because otherwise we're just cruising, and then I genuinely think we become stagnant. And like
Yeah.
pain is also it's almost like it's showing you where the barrier of your comfort zone lies, and you can choose to poke it on the other side and come out of it, right? Or you can stay inside and wallow in it and go, I'm confined by this. Whereas I can go and actually look for the other side and go, oh, okay, I'm not confined by anything. So I usually say, like, if you're feeling something shitty right now, good for you, because you have the opportunity to
100%.
rise. You can
100%.
rise.
Yeah, 100%. Even in your journey, right? If we go back to fitness, like if you're going through those tough days, you gotta like stop and think, wow, actually, this is a good thing right now. Because it's gonna make you a better person. You're gonna mentally grow, physically grow, and you're really gonna change. So yeah, I think it's what we've established from this podcast is pain is leading to something different, in my opinion, in people's lives. So I'm pretty sure like there's people out there listening to this gone through like different types of pain, and they're like in this new position that they're in, and they're gonna look back on there like, you know what, I went through it. Here I am on the other side.
So what would you, if you take away that sports didn't even exist today, what would you have done otherwise, career-wise?
That's such a tough question. The reason, probably start a business, some other business. I did start like a t-shirt line in uni. So it was for tourists. I had mapped it all out, everything. I got actually designs to this day. I've never printed them out. I may print them out. Who knows? Just for.
There is a request after this podcast.
Yeah, if there's a request,
there will be a limited edition coming out.
No, yeah, that's it. One edition, and that's it. No more.
Precise name.
I don't know what the name was either, but I think it probably would have been some sort of like, I always was very entrepreneurially driven from a young age. I always wanted to create something. I always wanted to be in business, and I didn't know what that calling was for me. Like for me, business was always like, you always heard about corporates, and that's the only thing I knew. Now obviously you've heard about e-commerce and so on. Like so we're in a really good position right now in terms of like just our generation. The rise of the internet has led to like me creating our businesses. Right now we're doing what we're doing because of the internet. If there was no internet, we'd still be maybe in the gym floor. So I'd say probably in business, but I don't know what sort of business I'd be. Maybe the t-shirt industry or the fashion industry, some shit like that. I have no clue. But it wouldn't be anything like majorly, like I can't think of like me being a lawyer or anything like that. Yeah.
Nah.
At all. No.
I think I would. I mean, there was a time when I wanted to be in the Air Force and fly the ship. I was gonna say fly the airplane.
Fly the shit.
But I think also that's because my granddad was my hero when I was a kid, and he was in the Air Force, and then he was a
Oh.
pilot. So I think you just take on these things from people that you look up to as well.
And people you've seen, yeah, it's true actually, because you look at everyone around you and what are they doing? But that's the thing, I looked at that and I was like, I don't want to do what they're doing.
No,
So you also kind of look at it that way, right? You're like, everyone's like a bit miserable. I don't want to do that.
yeah,
That's how I saw it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Interesting stuff.
Yeah, fascinating. But to be honest, as kids, you do think of like, everyone has like, oh, I want to be this person when you grow up. I think for me was, what was my thing when I to grow up? Probably a doctor. But it wasn't even that. It was like, I was like, after a while, you just didn't want to do it because I knew what doctors did and stuff. It was like a whole dream, but then you're like, hold on, they work this amount of hours, they do this, they do that. Not for me. But you live and learn, right? But yeah, it's a really good podcast. If you guys enjoy this, please share with friends and family. Tag us on IG. Drop us a review, comment down below. Give us 5 stars. It will help us a lot to move up to different countries as well. So yeah, throw the 5 in the air. And we'll be back next week as a trio, I believe. I'm not too sure. But take care and see you next week.